Hello and welcome to the I Can Do podcast with Benjamin Lee. We're here to talk about tips and strategies to have an I Can Do mindset. Life is what you put into it. Get the most you can. Here's your host, Benjamin Lee.
All right, we are back. Today we are talking about hobbies on our Fridays focus. I'm doing something new here with the podcast where every Friday you'll either hear me talk about some book or biography that I've read or have a special guest. And today we have on, once again, Tanya DePeiza. Tanya was on the show earlier this year, back in February, and Tanya is my sister. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. And as I was thinking about this, actually, Tanya, you had asked me about being back on the show because you said you had a lot of fun over Thanksgiving. And so here you are. So welcome back to the show, Tanya. How are you?
Thank you, Ben. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I will leave the link to the previous discussion that we had in the show notes. So be sure to go back and listen to that conversation that we had where Tanya talks about her health journey. And it's been, I believe, 4 years since you had your bariatric surgery. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You're doing fantastic. Keep it going. We're going to talk about something else, though, something that sometimes people look down upon, I think. You know, we live in a world where people are really driven to work. Work is a great thing. Before there's ever sin, work was created by God. So work has always been a great thing. You know, I read, Tanya, about an article, I saw something online about Elon Musk, and he's talking about AI, and in 20 years, no one will be working. I just don't believe that to be the case because there's 24 hours in a day. So if you sleep 8, if it takes 90 minutes to eat 3 meals, work out for an hour, you got like 13, 14 hours left in the day. Not to mention that work is from God. So we're not going to be overtaken by robots, at least not yet. And even then, or when that happens, we'll go back and watch Terminator to know exactly what to do. Right, Tanya? But in the meantime,
the first one.
Yeah, the very first one. What I think is happening for a lot of people are workaholics. And a lot of people get burned out. And I want us to talk about hobbies. Now, for those who can see, there's a little bit of a blur. I'm a big Marvel fan. And Tanya knows that. We actually went to a fan expo in Dallas earlier this year. That was really fun.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. Then we went to NTX Comic Show. You didn't have as much fun there. We're not going to go into details, but you didn't have as much fun there. And then I went to another one. So I've started doing those for the last few years. Give us a description. What are your hobbies that keep you busy? Because you are really passionate about these hobbies. So talk to us for the next couple of minutes about these hobbies.
Yes. So I've been doing hobbies for a very long time. I remember under 10, I had no interest in dolls. What I did have an interest in were Lincoln Logs and things where I could put things together, popsicle sticks, and I'd make houses and little villages, or I'd color. And so from very young, I remember I love to do stuff like that. And in hindsight and thinking about our dad, he was also what I would call a maker or a creator. He made Mom a leather purse and actually carved the details on the lift of the purse. I have no idea where that went, but I remember him doing that, or making bookshelves or creating things for his tools. So for me, that led me into coloring, which as a child, I didn't think was all that fun, but it's booming right now for adults because of its calming effects. And I then got into like acrylic painting, and paper craft seemed to be my personal sweet spot. So in paper crafting, there's so much you can do. Like there's no limits to what you can create. I make cards, I make artist trading cards, I make mini albums, I make flip books, I make bookmarks, I do all the things. I love the feel of paper. So I still love books, even though I have a Kindle, I still like the physical feel of paper. And I love stickers. And I will always love stickers forever. Okay, I probably have over 2,000 stickers. And there are things, you can make whole scenes out of stickers. Or, you can just, the sky is the limit. So it's not just a hobby, it just does so much more for me than that.
Okay, so I want to stop you here. And I'm reading this book called Disney's Land by Richard Snow. I first heard about this on Cal Newport's podcast, and I got it for my birthday. And Tanya got it for me for my birthday.
That's
That was on
right.
my birthday list. I forgot about that originally. I was like, who got me this book? And you're like, you did, or I did. So I remembered. Don't judge me. Get off me. So anyway, what's interesting about Walt Disney? So we went to Disney World last month, and in his book, he talks about these hobbies that he had. And so I just want to read, and Tanya, bear with me and everyone listening, because this is really setting up what you just talked about. And I want to dive into it a little bit more after I get done reading here. So one of the big hobbies that Walt Disney had was with trains. And so on page 23, the author said this: as did tens of thousands of others in those post-war months, he felt, he said, that it seemed like a hopeless thing to begin to pick up again. So Walt Disney felt like, you know, going through war, having success, having failure, how do you start all over again? His daughter Diane wrote, I think it was just after the war, when nothing seemed to stimulate him. I could sort of sense it. I could tell he wasn't pleased with anything he was doing. One small enterprise did please him, though, and it had little to do with the art he had done so much to invent, and of which he was the undisputed master. In the Christmas season of 1947, he bought himself a gift, something I've wanted all my life. So he said, I'm going to buy myself a gift, and it was a Lionel electric train set. So think about this. Walt Disney buys himself a gift. He's down in the dumps. His hope, his creativity is low. He put together the layout next to his office, is what the author says, so he could play with his railroad in odd hours. Then he thought it would be nice to add some sidings and then put in a little landscaping, and then any collector or hobbyist will recognize the fatal progression. That's exactly what's happened to you with 2,000 stickers. Something happened where you said, I'm going to get some stickers, and now you got a whole catalog of stickers.
Yeah. Oh,
But I
yeah.
find this interesting because hobbies, and I think that we need to be careful to keep them exactly that. Now, I will say this: Walt Disney with the train, this is going to turn into something bigger and bigger. He's going to buy a 5-acre house in California with his wife, and he's going to build a train set in the back, and big enough where people could sit on it and it would ride them around. And he had to dig like a little underpass type thing because his wife wanted her garden not to get ruined by the train. And then eventually, he would have dinner parties where people would come over and they would ride this train. So when we went to Hollywood Studios, there's a Walt Disney Museum, and you can see people sitting on the train, or maybe it's in the book here. It's hilarious. So this adult is sitting on trains. And let me read this. When in the early 90s, the New York Times film critic Bosley Crowther visited Disney, he was dismayed to find that the man whose work he had long admired seemed totally uninterested in movies and seemed wholly, almost weirdly concerned with the building of a miniature railroad engine and a string of cars. All of his zest for invention, for creative fantasies, seemed to be going into this plaything, and the film critic said he went away feeling sad. So whenever I talk to you about your stickers, your crafting,
Mhm.
you light up. When I
I
talk to
do.
you about other stuff, not so much. So can you relate with what was happening with Disney? When or what caused you to say, you know what, I want to try these stickers. I want to try these crafts. And how has it just helped you with hope and with excitement?
Yeah. So one, that's a great story. And it's a little comical when I think about the critic, like this was a total bust. But it was a bust for him. It was
Yeah. And
not a
that's,
bust
yeah,
for Walt Disney.
That's
So I
exactly
think
right.
I think, from what I heard you read, Ben, Walt Disney kind of lost some of his mojo for whatever reason. And there was something about that train, and maybe you'll read it later in the book or who knows what, but there was something about that that ended up kind of being his muse. That's what I'm hearing. Um, Something big and probably clunky, and his wife's garden doesn't want to be messed up. But for him, it triggered a spark that the other things he was doing didn't do. And it doesn't have to be where other people understand it. It did something for him. And now, all these years later, look what Walt Disney created, how it's evolved even after his passing. So for me, it's very similar. I have kind of had the crafting bug since I was little. And over time, that started to transition into other things. So, not to go down the rabbit hole for a year by year, because I know we're not going to do that. But I will say, probably over the last 13 years, there's been a lot of things that's influenced it. I'm also a journaler. I love to journal. I have a whole tote full of journals just from this year that I plan on going through probably the last week of the month just to see what happened. So with journaling, for me, it's not just journaling, and there's different types of journaling. Some people bullet journal where they're just listing the highlights of the day. Some people art journal. I do that as well. I have a journal just for making different type of scenes with papers and stickers and rhinestones and all the things. And then I have something called the everything journal, and everything goes in it. I junk journal in there. I will literally cut up what I ate for the day if it was in a package and glue it down. Okay. I like making flips and pockets and tucking things in and stuff like that. So it allows me to be creative. And it doesn't matter if someone were to pick it up and be like, what does this mean? Doesn't matter if you don't know. It's my personal journal and I know what it means for me.
Okay, so one of the things I'm hearing then is hobbies are individual in nature. So
Yes.
with even somebody like Walt Disney, he got some pushback originally from this film critic, but
Yes.
what it also did, it got him out of like, sometimes writers will have writer's block. So it
Hmm.
got him out of a funk where like what you were saying, he lost his mojo. But there are also other things that happened. I'm curious if this has ever happened to you. Let me just read one more part on page 36. He went to a railroad like expo,
Hmm.
and I believe it was in Chicago. So he traveled cross country with one of his buddies, and that really sparked this interest of like taking it one step further. And that actually, so it says on page 36, a surprising number of the ideas in this inaugural memo would come to pass, but the most immediate result of Disney's visit to the railroad fair was his determination to build a railroad of his own. And so going to something new, so like going to a Comic Con, going to a convention, going to a craft convention. I don't know if there's sticker conventions or not. If they're not, you need to create one. But it gave him spark and it gave him an idea. And after the accident at his house, a little girl got burned. He said, okay, that's enough. But that eventually is why in the parks today, what do you see? Trains. So
Hmm.
it was sufficient and it gave him even more creativity. Now there was one more, and this again is in Chicago. Tanya, have you been to the Chicago Art Institute?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm,
I
I'm
don't know if
curious.
I've ever seen it, but
Okay. So you mean you've driven past it? You actually have never bought a
no,
ticket.
I
All right,
have
come
bought a
on.
ticket, but they change their exhibits. Don't judge me.
Okay, I am judging you, number one. And number two, okay, have you ever heard of the room? It's called the Thorn Room. Okay, so he went to this room, this exhibit, and let me just read this on page 55. The Thorn Rooms enchanted Disney as they have millions of others over the years. Today, 68 of the rooms comprise the most popular exhibit at the Chicago Art Institute. So we need to go and see that.
We do.
It's like small little miniature um, things. It says in 1932, this woman, Narcissa Niblack Thorne, started commissioning and overseeing the construction of a 1-inch scale of domestic interiors. So there was a exquisite realism They recreated rooms, parlors, kitchens, bedchambers, foyers from Europe, Asia, and America. 1 inch. People today are involved like with these micro Lego sets.
Yes.
What are you talking about? Micro Lego
Yes.
sets. So he went to that exhibit and then he began to collect miniatures with such enthusiasm that in 1951 he would write a friend. Now listen to this. Disney said, "My hobby is a lifesaver. When I work with these small objects, I become so absorbed that the cares of the studio fade away, at least for a while." Is that how
Yes.
you feel with your hobbies?
Absolutely. Yeah, which might be why I craft for 8 hours versus other things that actually need to get done. Uh, but, as you were reading about miniatures, when I go into Hobby Lobby or Michael's, they have whole rows for just miniature stuff. Like, people get into that. They're making miniature houses with all the things, right? And so that didn't speak to me. I don't know when, and I don't know, like, how it progressed, but I've tried a lot of crafts over the years. I can crochet. I did that for a little bit. I tried knitting. I got mad at stabbing myself. So I'm like, this is not my hobby. I've tried several things and I'm like, but paper. And because I already like paper, I've always loved stationery. I would always be in Art Mart. Remember Art Mart? So they
I
didn't just
went to,
have the
yeah,
good broccoli and cheese croissant
yeah,
and the
chocolate
chocolate croissant.
and ham and cheese.
Yes, all that, but on the other side of it, they sold all these multicolored boxes, they sold stickers, they sold paper, and they sold pens. I also love pens. I like the gel pens because they write smooth. I like them because they don't smear. So I love pens to go with paper, so I buy certain types of journals. I love dotted journals to both write in or color in, or, when I can't find my grown-up words, I literally just post pictures that match my mood. And so for me, art is what you make it, and it speaks to people differently. So, I'm not a Van Gogh, but I make pretty things. And I think everybody, when you're into something to the point where you want to just kind of escape from daily life or things that are hard, it's an absolutely great outlet. And so that's definitely what I heard from him. You had the trains, which kind of then merged into miniatures. I'm not sure what he got out of it, but he loved it enough
Right, right. I
to
think
to
that,
get away.
yeah, and I think it's like what you're saying. You're very detailed about your pens, your
Mhm.
paper, your texture, and so it's the details that I think eventually start mattering.
Yes.
And for him, with what he's creating with the parks and with movies, he was very, very detailed and being an artist himself with drawing. So a 1 inch, that's super small. I have my let me see here. I have my 6 inch action figures here with Vision from Marvel. And so it's always interesting too. And it's a progression. So I've noticed that for myself with Marvel. Josh and I, my son, actually started collecting back in 2018 with
Mhm.
the Titan series. So those were the 12-inch action figures. And then I got into Hasbro with the helmets and things like that. And then I got into the Funko Pops, which is like impossible to keep up because there's like a million of them. And I was like, okay, I give up. But I got a lot. And I was like, I can't keep up. And then I found out about the 6 inch action figures. I was like, oh man, where have I been?
Yeah.
So, there's always like this progression and then posters like you can see behind me. And now it's more so with, the expos and things like that. So I've slowed down, on the toys and things. So let me ask you, I want you to give some wisdom to the audience. And we're going to play a game called Rapid Fire before we wrap up.
Can I show you something real quick?
Yeah.
So just like you have the action figures,
Yeah.
I'm gonna experiment with these,
What are
which are
those?
these are 2-inch by 2-inch cards, and sometimes I just do sticker dumps for
Yeah, that's
stickers that I
cool.
just wanna clear out.
Yeah.
So it teaches me, like, crafting may not always be on an 8.5 by 11.
Yeah.
I'm gonna experiment with some 20s, but anyway, go ahead.
No, I love that. So let me ask you, one, how do you How do you keep all of this stuff organized?
So I also kind of obsess a little bit over label makers and naming things because I've gotten to the point where I have a lot of stuff. I have somewhat limited space. So the labeling makes it easier. We have 2 rows of a built-in bookshelf. One row is just stickers.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
One side. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you got
Um,
2,000, that's a lot of stickers.
Yeah, and, so organizing is the key. So I need to know where stuff is. So I kind of went from just having a lot of stickers like in a big basket to separating by theme. So I have characters, I have spooky, I have floral, I have nature, I have people, I have just word stickers. And so that makes it easier for me to kind of get in the flow when I'm crafting versus spending a lot of my time. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? So that helps. And to what you said about, like, what you've attended for Marvel and things like that, my inspirations come from Pinterest and TikTok and Instagram and going on people's crafting website on YouTube. I have at least 20 playlists of different types of crafts from people. Then it gives me a chance to experiment because I have those slumps too. I love to craft. I love using my stickers, but I also have those moments where I'm just like, I don't know, like, I'm not in it, So I watch
With
a
what?
couple videos.
With the hobby? With the hobby, you
Yeah.
mean? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's interesting. So let me ask you, you're answering some of these things. One, ways for people to maybe find new hobbies. You could go to Pinterest or
Mhm.
TikTok or Instagram, maybe even go into an art gallery.
Yes.
Two, um, what you said is fascinating because a hobby, I guess even a hobby can become a little taxing, and that's what happened with Disney when the girl got burned from the steam, so he stopped it. So hobbies don't necessarily have to just be forever. We can bounce
Right.
around, right? So
Yeah.
that's something good to keep in mind. What would you tell someone with keeping something a hobby and not always trying to monetize it?
I would tell them to just spend time crafting without the phone.
Okay.
You don't have to post everything you create. You don't have to compare yourself to other creators. I think sometimes that's one of the biggest stumps that stop people from creating. Mine doesn't look like so and so's. Wow, that's really good. I don't have money to buy those kinds of supplies, right? And so you can get caught up in that to the point where you're like, and a lot of people trade a lot of their art. I'm included. I trade art, I send happy mail, I have pen pals, but I've learned like it can get to the point where it's overwhelming what you have received from someone and then you're supposed to give it back and then I'm like, I'm tired. So
Right.
I learned quit saying, I'll swap, I'll swap, I'll swap with you. No, no,
Right.
Tanya, you won't swap.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Well, and I will say this too. I mean, Disney, the hobby did turn into something big that eventually did turn into something where he was able to monetize it. So there's always that potential of those things happening. But I guess just holding on to that joy. And the other thing is with Disney, there was no TikTok, there was no Instagram. And so that actually unlocked his mind
Yes,
to get out of that stump. And I think there's something there that everybody needs to take away from this is that
I agree.
the hobbies themselves are a form of escape.
Hmm.
So hobbies, when you get really meticulous, like with what you're saying, with your 2x2s and having 2,000 stickers and the exact kind of ink and even the printer that you're using or the whatever it is that you're using to lay all these things out, you'd almost become like an expert. And social media can't do that. You still have to put in that work and that quiet time, right?
Yes, yes. And I've learned too, things have changed with me a little bit with my health, and so I'm learning like too many distractions take me away from what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll have on a movie, it's absolutely awful, but it's just for the background noise, so it doesn't matter if I pay attention or I'll play a movie that I've already seen because it really doesn't matter if I pay attention, but sometimes the silence is the sweet spot. I'll play music instead. And I've actually found I'm usually doubly productive in what I'm doing, which is helpful. And I also made something a couple weeks ago because there's so many different things I want to try or have tried. So I made this binder of
Nice.
activities,
Wow.
right? So instead of, okay, full disclosure and confession, I'm usually working on 3 to 5 projects at the same time, then wonder why I'm overwhelmed and nothing gets finished. So now it's like, okay, well, you know what? Let's see what we got going. We got art journaling, acetate play. So I found at a thrift store. Remember those projectors we used to have in class with the plastic stuff? Those are great ways to cut down to scale to make like a shaker card. And I bought like a whole box for like $1. Um, acrylic painting, altar journals. So
Mm,
those are always fun for me because I can take any kind of journal, give it a whole different cover, put stuff in on the inside. You can use those for junk. You can use it for whatever you want. But this, there's just so many things. This doesn't want to flip well, but greeting cards. So the point was these were some collage postcards that I hadn't really touched in a couple years. And I just added some labels also from the thrift store and put all kind of different things that I want to do, bookmarks, decoupage, fussy cutting. So fussy cutting is when you get books like this that
mm.
tell you cut it up, right? And they have
Interesting.
all kind of things in here that you can cut out.
Gotcha.
So I got little baby scissors to cut out things. So anytime you're cutting this stuff out, it's fussy cutting, right? Doing flip books, that's fun. And there's tutorials on anything you want to do, both on Pinterest and YouTube. I send Happy Mail because I feel like that's
I
a
enjoy your
ministry
Happy
for
Meal.
me. Thank you. I enjoy writing mail to myself. And
I'll edit that out.
please don't. But that's a great way to encourage people. And writing, the way we used to back in the day, well, the more technology has grown, we now email more, we text more, but that physical like handling of the paper in the actual mail has slowly kind of gotten forgotten. But there's other creators like me who definitely bring it back to where they even have subscription services. So that for a small fee, they will send you something every month. And so, there's no limits. I decorate my envelopes. The post office people look at me kind of strange and I'm like, don't be jelly, just ask for what you want. But, it just you can find ways to kind of both encourage yourself and get out of those slumps when you find yourself in one.
Yeah. So whether you're Walt Disney or Tanya DePeiza or me, hobbies bring us great joy. And hobbies are individualistic in nature. Hobbies are designed to be fun. Hobbies actually can open the door to more creativity, I would argue, more than social media could ever do. Hobbies can help us to stay connected, and hobbies can be short term, they can be long term. So, whatever kind of hobby that you have, enjoy it, right? And that's the joy of hobby. It's a nice little way of escape, and it may turn into something that started with a train, a railroad convention, a small train, a train in your backyard to a park.
Yes.
So,
And I want to, can I add one more thing?
yeah,
For a lot of us, it's not just a hobby. It's a way that a lot of people help manage their mental health. And so, now I think more than ever in 2025, we have all these different climates, right? Social climate, political climate, people dealing with health issues, mental health issues, or physical. Sometimes that is the therapy for them. And sometimes that's the therapy for me. So I'm not saying people should not get professional help. I'm saying that sometimes whatever a person's hobby is a lifesaver in more ways than one.
yeah, well said. And you're very much like Disney because you actually have craft Saturdays, like once a month, and different parties.
Yes,
I've gone to a lot of the
yes,
paint parties and things like
yes,
that. So hobbies can also be shared. And
yes,
that's what Walt Disney did. He started sharing his hobby with the train. Everybody's like, this train is
yeah,
amazing. Let me get on the train. I feel like a little kid. So
yeah,
that's a cool thing with hobbies. We don't have to be embarrassed about them. It's something for us to lean into, just like with you joining me at a couple of expos this
yeah.
year and collecting some Black Panther Funko Pops and all those kind of things. So It's designed to inspire other people as well. Tanya,
Yeah.
thank you for being on the show. Where
Thank
can
you,
people
man.
find you on TikTok and Instagram?
Okay, so my handle is at that creative Tanya.
For both
That
TikTok
creative Tanya.
and Instagram?
Both TikTok and Instagram. I would love to have people come follow me and hopefully get inspired, and I can follow you back and see what you're creating in your world.
Cool. You owe me money for being on the show and promoting your TikTok,
You
which
owe me for money for blessing you by being here. You're gonna see a market intake on your
all right, wherever you may be, listen, I got some stats too with the podcast, at least for Spotify for 2025. For 2025, went out to 15 countries. So wherever you may
nice.
be, thank you for listening. Please leave me
Yes.
a review, a rating, follow Tanya, and create your hobby. Share it. I'd love to hear from you as well. Take
Awesome.
care and
Take
God
care.
bless. Bye bye.
Bye.